Imagine this. You're just doing your job, trying to keep things together while the people around you are either panicking, messing up, or trying their best to hold the team steady. That's basically Akira, shun, and drop. Getting ready for action while frustration practically fogs the air because Koro messed up again. Karen, though? Calm, focused, unshakable. She gathers the Dragon Squadron like she's done it 1,000 times. Akira thanks her, and just like that, everyone moves out. Meanwhile, far away from the battlefield vibe, the scene shifts to a tall, quiet building, the office of Next Systems. Rows of coworkers work in silence, tapping at keyboards like it's another ordinary day. One coworker sneaks a guilty glance at Yagami-senpai, clearly feeling bad for causing trouble earlier. But Yagami, ever the dependable senior, simply reminds them that beginners make mistakes. No judgment, no stress, just reassurance. The coworker nods, grateful, and returns to work. Then a phone buzzes. Yagami looks toward Takahashi's desk. Takahashi checks the screen and sees a message from his girlfriend. His expression stiffens as he remembers that today is her birthday and their 1-year anniversary. Takahashi has already put in more than enough effort today, even though the workload is still heavy, and because this isn't something he can dump on a newbie, Yagami decides he'll get it done himself. He tells Takahashi to go, so his girlfriend won't spend her special day alone. Takahashi can hardly believe it, moved nearly to tears, and thanks him over and over before running off. Once Yagami finishes the mountain of routine tasks, he finally stands up, feeling the weight of the entire day in his bones. He considers getting a drink before heading home, but before he can leave, he hears someone call his name. It's Takahashi, and beside him stands his girlfriend. Yagami turns, confused about what's wrong now. Takahashi expresses his gratitude again, but his girlfriend steps forward, explaining that Takahashi has been acting strange all day. She made him tell the truth about leaving Yagami with all the work, and then she hands Yagami a gift, a thank you meal from Tokunoya. Yagami is surprised and tries to refuse, but eventually accepts the beef bowl, salad, miso soup, egg, and pickles, planning to enjoy it peacefully at home. Takahashi insists on taking him out to a restaurant, but Yagami politely declines. It's their anniversary after all. They walk him to the station together. Along the way, Takahashi admits that Yagami is always covering for him, while his girlfriend laughs and says her boyfriend talks about Yagami nonstop. Yagami quietly thinks she seems like such a nice girl, probably too nice for someone like Takahashi, or maybe for most men in general. Wanting to give them space, he decides to slip away using a different route. But just as he walks off, a little boy suddenly runs into the street. A truck barrels toward him. Without thinking, Yagami lunges forward and pushes the boy out of the way. The boy is safe, but Yagami takes the full hit. Takahashi rushes to him in panic, shouting for an ambulance, trying desperately to keep him awake. Even while bleeding and fading, Yagami's first question is about the boy. Takahashi's girlfriend, crying, assures him the boy only has minor scratches. That's enough for him. Relief softens his expression, but the world around him begins to fade out. He can barely hear anything. Everything goes dim. He realizes he's dying. Yet strangely, he feels at peace. He thinks he would rather be the one seeing others off, instead of making others see him go. But when that thought repeats inside his fading mind, regret creeps in. He's only 29, not even 30. The average lifespan in Japan is 80. He wishes he could have lived that long. He thinks about everything he has worked for, all the skills he built up, all the responsibilities he carried. He even worries about Takahashi, who will definitely mess up again. Then a faint light appears. In his mind, something like a search engine begins running, scanning the phrase, "seeing others off," and it returns 431 million results. Yagami becomes aware again of how much life he still wanted to experience. The system narrows the search to individuals who can live to 80 years of age. 6,600,000 results. His regret deepens. He wants more time. One more chance. Anything. Then the system narrows the search one last time. Possibility of transferring skills. One result. Yagami wonders what this strange Google-like bar in his mind even is. Before he can process it, a bright, soft light shines from above. It wraps around him gently, pulling him upward, and in an instant, he's somewhere else. Quiet, unfamiliar, surrounded by echoes of birds. He blinks. He isn't dead. The ground beneath him rustles, and a strange sensation spreads through his body. His skin turns blue. People speak an unfamiliar language around him. A goblin steps forward and tells him he fell from the sky and is now one of them. Yagami touches his ears, feeling their new shape. The memory of the truck returns, and he understands. He died and was reborn as a goblin. The goblins laugh as he tries to process everything, staring at the rough huts and unknown surroundings. Days turn into weeks. A month passes and he begins adapting to this new life. He learns about goblin biology, how female goblins can get pregnant while already pregnant, how their lives burn bright and end within days, leaving behind countless offspring. They remind him of rabbits or cicadas, frantic, brief, and overflowing with life. Each goblin is born with one special skill that gets passed to a single goblin at the moment of death. No matter how many skills they gather later, only their original one can be inherited. Yagami's skill? Octogenarian. The ability to live for 80 full human years. His final wish from his past life was granted. Because of that, he outlives 3, maybe 4 generations of goblins, who live, grow, and die all within a week. Over the years, he gathers more than 200 skills from others, using any of them freely, but when he dies, all of them will disappear. Only octogenarian will remain. It feels like a waste, but at least he has 80 years ahead of him in this strange new world. And for now, that is enough. He explores the massive forest. The goblin village is at the heart of the forest. Most goblins prefer not to leave the woods and spend their entire lives here. Spotting some fruit on the tree, he picks it and starts munching on it. His sense of taste hasn't changed since becoming a goblin. However, what has changed is his sleep. Goblins have a 7-day lifespan, so they can't afford to spend their limited time sleeping. So their bodies have evolved to avoid sleep altogether. This applies to him as well, but that doesn't bother him since he is already used to his new body. The problem is something else. Goblins have a higher sensibility in another area. After walking for a while, Yagami finds an injured man. He quickly gets to work and uses heal. This is one of his 200 skills. This man is revealed to be a demon lord. At first it doesn't catch his attention, but then the realization hits him with a shock. Thinking about it now, he does look like a typical demon lord from an RPG. But it does make sense. In a world with goblins, there would be a demon lord as well. The demon lord immediately realizes that Yagami is no ordinary goblin. Yagami urges him to stay quiet so he can close his wounds. But the demon lord tells him that he can't cure his injuries even if he tries. The only one who can heal him is himself. Such is the nature of a demon lord. But Yagami doesn't want to give up. He asks the demon lord if he can help him using any of his other skills. When the demon lord asks him how many skills he has, he reveals that he has 277. The demon lord can't help but laugh upon hearing this. He tells him that he must have a big vessel to have so many skills. Perhaps he can even inherit skills from other species as well. So the demon lord makes him an offer to take his skills as well. The realization hits him hard. He knows what it means. For the people in this world, leaving their skills to someone is like leaving a proof that they were alive. After pondering it over for a while, Yagami accepts the offer. A ball of light escapes the demon lord's body and enters Yagami. It's a skill called the Law of the Jungle. Monsters in this world obey those who are stronger than them. With these skills, when he defeats someone, they will obey him no matter what. And just like that, a nameless goblin has become the new demon lord. The demon lord's body starts to fade away until it's nothing but light. On this day, the world became filled with joy. People celebrated the death of the demon lord who had been running rampant for centuries. But little does everyone know, the threat of the demon lord hasn't disappeared completely. At least, not yet. Yagami, a former office worker who died at 29 while shielding a child from a truck, awakens in a new world and realizes with shock that he has been reborn as a small goblin. As his new life begins, the young goblin gathers fruit in the forest and notices a noisy crowd in the village. He approaches with curiosity and learns that a villager has killed a human, which causes panic because harming humans is a forbidden act. The accused goblin insists he acted in self-defense, but fear spreads as another villager rushes in, overwhelmed by the news that humans are approaching to attack. The goblins tremble because they are naturally weak, and the child wonders how many enemies are coming. He learns that 50 humans are advancing from the front. He steps forward and urges the others to stay calm, moving alone toward the forest edge where a human knight appears, hostile and ready for battle. When the humans charge, the goblin accepts the danger and activates Iron Body, turning his small form as hard as metal. A soldier's strike fails completely, surprising the attackers, and the goblin immediately unleashes Stone Blast, sending a rain of rocks onto the soldiers. A female commander arrives and initially dismisses the goblin as insignificant, but she grows surprised when the goblin approaches with caution and attempts peaceful negotiation. He admits that the fault lies on their side but refuses the idea of humans wiping out the entire village. He reminds her that the goblin village holds judicial autonomy and reveals himself as the goblin judge. He explains that killing a human results in 7 days of imprisonment, a punishment equal to life sentence since goblins live only 7 days. The commander briefly considers the logic, but her soldiers reject the idea and demand the village's destruction. Before the situation escalates, the goblin's inherited Demon King skill activates, forcing the defeated humans into absolute obedience. They kneel instantly and swear loyalty to him, leaving the commander stunned. She eventually agrees to recognize the goblin laws inside the forest, though she insists human laws apply outside it. When she wonders about his name, he chooses to keep his old Japanese name, Akira, while she introduces herself as Karen, a security inspector. After withdrawing her troops, Karen acknowledges that Akira saved the entire village. The goblins gather around him joyfully, calling him their hero for negotiating with humans and preventing a massacre. Their excitement rises quickly, and they appoint him as the new village chief, leaving Akira overwhelmed as he realizes that in another world, inside a goblin village, he has unexpectedly become the mayor. In the quiet forest, Karen reports that the captured goblin has died in its cage. Her voice is steady, but the moment hangs heavy. Then her attention shifts to Akira, who is now dressed in an elaborate ceremonial outfit that looks completely out of place. Confused, she asks why he's wearing something so strange. Akira, embarrassed, explains that after settling things with the villagers, they immediately made him their mayor, and the outfit unfortunately comes with the role. Karen bluntly tells him it doesn't suit him at all. Akira, flustered, starts removing it, but she softens, admitting that his new position might actually work in their favor. Akira doesn't understand at first and worries aloud that her higher-ups won't accept the peaceful outcome. Karen pauses, surprised he guessed so easily. Akira explains that back in his old world, every decision he made at work was overturned by his bosses anyway. Karen laughs quietly, telling him these problems exist everywhere, in every world. Akira sighs, realizing workplace headaches are universal. When she regains her composure, Karen asks him for a favor. She wants him to come with her to meet her superior. She believes everything will go smoother if he's there in person. Akira thinks about the village behind him, the responsibility suddenly placed on his shoulders, and understands he doesn't really have a choice. If he refuses, the village stays in danger, so he agrees. As they head into town, Akira feels every pair of eyes on him. Karen keeps him close, guarding him more like a visiting guest under escort than an actual threat. He notices the townspeople don't seem terrified, more curious than anything. He remembers that long ago, goblins were kept as pets because of their docile nature, even considered adorable. Thinking back on his own past as a human, he realizes he also finds goblins cute, almost mascot-like. The trend faded over time, likely because goblins only lived a week. The group reaches the town gate, and once it closes behind them, Akira finally relaxes. They continue to a huge estate, and when Akira steps inside, he is stunned. It's a full mansion, far grander than anything he imagined. Overwhelmed, he nervously asks to use the facilities. A maid requests Karen to guide him, and Karen agrees without hesitation. Inside, Akira finds himself in an unbelievably lavish bathroom. The luxury is so extreme it makes him too nervous to use it properly. Afterward, he glances from the window and spots and Count standing high in a massive twisted tree, trimming its branches with calm, practiced movements. Curious, Akira heads outside into the quiet garden. He stops beneath the tree and asks if the man prunes it every day. The Count looks down, his expression gentle but unreadable. He studies Akira for a moment and finds it unusual to see a goblin walking the grounds. He asks if Akira was dragged there or came to cause trouble. Akira answers honestly. He came on his own and only wants to talk. The conversation shifts as Akira brings up the recent killing of a human. He explains that he's here to make things right. The Count asks if Akira is the killer, but Akira clarifies he isn't. He simply chose to take responsibility. He came to offer a formal apology before the situation escalates further. The Count warns that without such action, the entire goblin village might have been wiped out. Akira agrees, but insists one tragedy shouldn't destroy future relations. Humans and goblins both make mistakes. What matters is learning from them so they aren't repeated. The Count silently absorbs his words. Then, abruptly, he asks whether Akira used the bathroom. Akira admits he did, and confesses the room was so extravagant that it actually kept him from relaxing enough to finish what he went there to do. The Count bursts out laughing, calling the design ridiculous. Akira quietly asks him not to laugh so loudly, afraid the mansion's owner might think he's being insulted. Right then, Karen arrives with the guards, announcing that she has brought the goblin in question, only to stop mid-sentence when she sees Akira and the Count already deep in conversation. She addresses the Count respectfully as Sir. Akira blinks in confusion, still thinking he's talking to a gardener. Karen immediately grabs him and clamps a hand over his mouth, scolding him to watch his tongue. She reveals the truth. The man he casually spoke with is the master of the entire estate, and even the emperor's uncle, Count Orleans. Realizing this, Akira freezes, his eyes wide, letting out a stunned cry. Instead of being offended, the count laughs heartily, amused by the misunderstanding. He says the mix-up gave him an interesting conversation and considers the entire matter settled. Akira sputters, accusing him of tricking them, while Karen looks ready to faint from embarrassment. But the count simply waves it off, dismisses Karen from her duties, and motions for Akira to follow him. As the count strolls away through the garden, humming cheerfully, Akira watches him with a mix of awe and confusion. This old-timer, who trims trees like an ordinary gardener, turns out to be a powerful VIP, and somehow he seems to have taken a liking to Akira. Akira soon finds himself surrounded by two affectionate women who excitedly cling to him, calling him adorable while pressing close enough to leave him flustered and unsure where to look. When they step outside, more women notice him and react the same way, amazed to see a goblin for the first time. Their cheerful admiration overwhelms him, and he manages only small, nervous sounds as they continue to squeeze him from both sides. Later, Akira is taken to a lively bar, where Count Orleans sits comfortably among a group of women. The Count casually allows Akira to call him Simon, and welcomes him as if they are already familiar. Still confused about the purpose of all this, Akira listens as the Count explains his fondness for goblins, and quietly reveals the reputation goblins have as passionate, physically gifted creatures. The women laugh and encourage the Count, and he boasts confidently about using one's natural strengths in life. Akira watches quietly, uncertain how someone of such high rank can behave so freely while the women around him treat him like an old friend. The Count continues speaking proudly about his lifestyle, claiming it is essential for anyone who wishes to lead others. Akira listens in awkward silence, trying to understand his point as the Count insists that leadership begins with understanding people. To the Count, understanding women involves years of experience and boldness, and he dismisses younger men as inexperienced despite their bravado. Akira understands part of the message but finds the delivery far too extreme. The Count eventually shifts the conversation and explains how he judges men differently. He talks about gambling as a way to see a man's true nature, describing how people reveal themselves when facing loss, pressure, or the temptation of a comeback. Akira imagines simple card games and listens to the explanation, then offers his own view. To him, the best way to understand a man is by observing how he deals with failure, whether he repeats the same mistakes or grows from them. The Count considers Akira's perspective seriously and acknowledges its truth. As Akira speaks, the women and the Count listen with surprising attentiveness. Akira assumes this must be a refined place since, even at expensive clubs in his old world, conversations often shifted away from serious topics. Here, the women remain engaged and curious, encouraging the Count with bright smiles. He praises their presence and reminds Akira to appreciate the moment, adding that goblins usually live short lives. Akira calmly explains that his innate skill gives him 80 years, and although his words bring a moment of silence, the Count quickly grows even more enthusiastic. To him, a long-lived goblin holds immense potential, and he urges Akira to continue his ideals long after the older generation is gone. Akira would prefer not to, but he lets the comment pass. The rest of the evening flows with laughter and teasing from the women, who comment on the Count's endless energy and even remark that Akira has surprising stamina himself. The warm atmosphere suddenly changes when a commotion erupts outside. A man on horseback loses control of a runaway carriage, and a young child stands directly in its path. The scene echoes the moment from Akira's former life when he died saving a child. Acting on instinct, he forms a wall of snow that stops the carriage before it reaches the boy. When the danger passes, Akira kneels to check the child. The boy, amazed by his blue face and long ears, grabs his hand and wonders aloud about his appearance. Akira simply explains that he is a goblin. The parents thank him warmly, surprised that a goblin can use magic, and playfully tug at his ears in gratitude. From a distance, the Count quietly observes everything. Recognizing Akira's rare lifespan and unusual abilities, he instructs his attendant to watch over him from now on. To him, a goblin who can live so long may one day become a force even greater than the archfiend itself. Akira sits in the forest with a group of young goblins gathered around him, reading a picture storybook aloud as they listen with bright curiosity. When he finishes, one of the children suddenly grabs his long ear and pulls it. Akira winces but tries to stay patient, even as the child stretches it again. Inside a nearby building, another person repeats the same action out of curiosity, tugging on Akira's ear while he explains that he has only relieved the child from earlier was unharmed. Rick continues pulling until another adult scolds him, though Rick insists that goblins are squishy. A well-dressed man bursts into the room in anger, shouting about the damaged carriage outside and declaring that it belongs to Sullivan Jr. The mood shifts immediately as he points toward the vehicle. Outside on the street, the Count stands beside Akira and calmly explains that Sullivan Jr. served as the Chancellor before the last one. Akira reacts with surprise. Sullivan Jr.'s servant demands that the goblin's owner reveal themselves. Akira repeats the name quietly, still confused, while the Count adds that the former Chancellor has retired to his hometown. Another man, noticing the crest on the carriage, expresses shock that a goblin is involved in such a matter. A furious nobleman confronts the Count directly, demanding to know how he intends to make things right and calling Akira an upstart. The Count stays calm and simply apologizes, even as the nobleman continues yelling. Akira quietly realizes that the Count is trying to keep his true rank hidden. The nobleman refuses to accept the apology, insisting that the person in the carriage is a close associate of the Chancellor. His anger grows louder, and Akira senses the situation may turn dangerous. He prepares himself and decides to use one of his abilities. Remembering that many goblin skills overlap, he chooses clairvoyance. A faint glow appears as he activates it and checks the carriage. After confirming what he sees, Akira states that nobody is inside the carriage. The nobleman immediately denies it, calling the idea ridiculous and insisting that trusting a goblin's words is foolish. The Count steps forward then, addressing the nobleman directly. He points out that if Akira is correct, the nobleman is misusing the authority of the crest for his own benefit. The nobleman freezes, shaken, while the Count studies him closely as if questioning whether the man's actions can be defended. The Count then turns to Akira and praises him for saving a child's life, noting that not just anyone can help a complete stranger. He announces that the goblin village will now fall under his personal protection, and calls Akira his brother-in-arms. Akira, confused, asks what he means. The Count explains that the village has been granted autonomy, equal to any human town. Akira thanks him, and the Count adds that someone will still watch over the village. Karen will be assigned to the task. Akira accepts this, relieved that Karen is the one overseeing them. Back in the goblin village, Akira informs everyone that the humans have accepted their agreement, and the village is no longer under human control. The goblins celebrate loudly, praising their mayor and shouting exaggerated compliments. Akira settles them down and tells them the village needs clear laws from now on. He begins by reaffirming the most important rule: no killing humans. Meanwhile, Karen remembers her secret instructions from the Count. She must observe Akira closely and report anything suspicious immediately. With that in mind, she realizes the commander believes she is only a distraction, hiding the true watcher in the shadows. Akira continues forming laws and asks which goblins have offensive skills. Many raise their hands. The commander tenses, but Akira reassures the group that Karen is their ally. Karen explains her role as an inspector and says she will only act if humans are endangered. Her serious tone startles the goblins, but she quickly softens and gently pats one of them, introducing herself as the mayor's bodyguard and messenger. Akira then proposes forming a garrison to maintain order. The commander is surprised, pointing out that goblins live only 7 days, meaning any organization would collapse quickly. Akira has already prepared for this. He selects a goblin and gives him a new name, Hanzo. He explains that the title and offensive skills will pass on to another goblin at each death, creating a continuous line: Hanzo 1, Hanzo 2, Hanzo 3, and so on. Goblins with offensive abilities will join the Hanzo team, allowing strength to carry across generations. The goblins follow the plan with excitement. Akira then asks for goblins skilled in calculations or appraising value. A few raise their hands. He names one of them Kainakuniya Feyun, who will handle all trade with humans. For justice, he creates another position, Doyama, the judge who will handle crimes within the village, with the name and skills passed down like the others. The goblins are amazed, calling it a perfect way to overcome their short lifespans. Karen observes silently and finally understands the Count's warning. Akira's ability to build systems and organize people so quickly shows that he is far more than an ordinary goblin. Neon in the forest. Akira pauses at a rocky clearing, noticing something strange but not yet understanding what he is looking at. Before he can examine it, a goblin rushes over and proudly urges him to look. Another goblin steps forward and introduces himself as Hanzo III, while Akira processes the name and asks what happened. His answer appears immediately. A human sits tied to the roots of a large tree, and the goblin stands beside him with clear satisfaction. Akira realizes the goblins have already begun carrying out the duties of the new system. Hanzo 3 happily reports that only 2 weeks have passed, yet the goblins are already passing down roles and acting independently. Akira inspects the restrained human and notes that everything has occurred exactly the way he hoped it would. When he asks for the details, the goblin explains that the man was sneaking through the woods and attacked first, and that he managed to capture him without killing him, just as Akira instructed. Akira studies the man's wounds and estimates that it will take a month for him to recover. Since the intruder entered goblin territory and struck first, Akira concludes that the situation clearly counts as self-defense. The goblin proudly confirms that he handled the entire incident on his own. When he begins shifting around nervously, Akira notices his strange behavior, though the goblin insists nothing is wrong. As the conversation continues, a nearby goblin admits that he promised a girl they would have a baby after he finished his current job. Akira immediately recognizes this as a classic death flag, knowing goblins often die after having just 1 or 2 children. Regaining focus, Akira encourages him to keep his promise and not leave her waiting. The goblin straightens up, thanks him, and quickly heads off. Akira steps in and tells the other goblin he will take responsibility from this point onward. The goblin gratefully agrees and runs after his partner. Akira then turns his attention to handing the captured human over to Karen, considering it the necessary next step. Before he can call for her, Karen emerges from the trees explaining that she has been listening the entire time. Akira reacts with surprise, and Karen remarks that she has known several people like him, individuals who shoulder every burden even when it harms them. Akira laughs awkwardly as she shifts to commenting on the lineage system he created. She observes how unusual it is for goblins to inherit names across generations. Akira explains that although they are only on the 3rd generation, results are already appearing. Akira directs her attention toward the captured man. Karen looks at him and sees the human sleeping heavily. Akira points out burns, cuts, and bruises across his body, all caused by different skills. Around the clearing, marks show Stone Blast, Blazing Blade, and Hypnotic Gale being used together. Karen notes that goblins often carry multiple unrelated skills, since their inheritance has never followed any order. Akira agrees as he extinguishes a leftover flame. He further explains that goblins frequently inherit skills unrelated to their natural talents, creating wasted potential. Humans usually choose skills that match or enhance their strengths, but goblins never had that luxury. Karen realizes he is talking about the new lineage system, and Akira confirms it. By grouping goblins with similar offensive abilities around the one who carries the Hanzo name, certain skills now pass more frequently within the same group. Because of this, some goblins have already inherited 3 or more skills of the same type, something never seen before. Akira thinks back to his final wish in his previous life, when he hoped to pass his skill specifically to Takahashi rather than a random person. Goblins, however, had always inherited without considering compatibility. Through this system, Akira aims to change that, believing that even with only 7 days to live, goblins still have room to grow. Karen observes that if this development continues, goblins may eventually be considered a legitimate threat. Akira remains calm, believing there is no reason to worry as long as he is present to prevent conflict with humans and resolve problems early. Karen concludes that they must keep him alive for a long time, and Akira notes that he will remain for 80 years whether anyone likes it or not. Elsewhere in the forest, a horned girl runs desperately while imagining a peaceful life with the master archfiend. Voices behind her order her to be stopped, but she pushes deeper into the woods. She activates a skill search and detects the presence of someone with the unique skill, Survival of the Fittest, convinced the master archfiend still lives. Determination fills her as she promises herself not to fail again. At the same time, Akira senses another problem rising in the distance. Another fire he must put out, whether he wants to or not. Akira spends his morning seated at his desk, surrounded by ink bottles, scattered notes, and worn books. He copies lines carefully, shaping each letter with patience until his hand begins to cramp. When he finally leans back, he feels the strain in his back and thinks again about how goblins lack the craftsmanship needed to make proper furniture. Even their chairs ache after a short while. He remembers the few goblins born with crafting skills and wonders if forming a new team around them might help fix simple things like this. A knock breaks the quiet and Karen steps into his home. She watches him write and tries to understand what he is doing. Akira continues his work, drafting a set of basic laws for the goblin village, rules he intends to show the humans. He knows goblins never needed written laws before, but now that he has claimed autonomy for the village, he must provide structure to support that claim. Karen stays beside him and questions why he never tried to claim self-defense in the earlier conflict. Akira remembers the moment a goblin killed a human and begins drawing overlapping circles to show her how negotiation works. He explains through the diagram that both sides meet at the shared middle point and that the weaker side must offer more at the start if it hopes to be heard at all. Karen quickly understands the meaning of the 7-day imprisonment he had proposed, a punishment that, for a goblin, is effectively a life sentence. As she watches him work, she thinks about the inherited name system he created and realizes how sharply he analyzes every situation. She begins to understand how much thought he poured into resolving that incident and quietly wonders what will happen when information about him eventually reaches the higher authorities. Standing behind him, she realizes that the longer he continues on this path, the more likely he will be treated as a threat, whether he intends it or not. A sudden noise erupts outside, followed by goblins shouting for everyone to flee. Akira and Karen rush out of the house. Near the fire pit, a horned girl appears among the panicked goblins. She moves with fierce speed, knocking several goblins to the ground, the earth cracking beneath her strikes. The goblins groan in pain as a dark shadow rises over another one who trembles helplessly. The girl demands information again and again, her anger growing by the second. She slams a goblin into a wall, embedding him into the cracked stone, just as Akira arrives and stops her attack. She turns toward him and studies him, deciding he must be the person in charge. When she realizes Karen is human, she becomes even more hostile and insists that the archfiend is alive and nearby. Activating skill search, she attempts to locate him and becomes confused when Akira suddenly glows with a skill response. Karen calls his name in shock as the girl stares at the glow and understands what it means. Her confusion turns into fury when she realizes Akira now holds the archfiend's skill. She concludes that he must have slain the master archfiend and stolen his power. She charges toward him without hesitation, leaving Akira no time to reason with her. As the surrounding goblins scream in panic, he prepares a binding spell in self-defense. Chains wrap around her body, but she tears through them with brute strength, shattering the restraints and rushing forward again. Debris scatters everywhere as she pushes toward Akira like a raging force. He studies her movements, waits for her reckless momentum, and activates a reflecting ability. Her own force rebounds sharply, sending her flying backward as her cloak whips through the air. Akira follows immediately with reinforced chains, binding her arms and legs so tightly that she can no longer move. She struggles violently and accuses him again of murdering the archfiend. Akira questions her belief, asking whether the archfiend she described, strong, wise, and gentle, seems like someone who could be defeated or tricked so simply. She falls silent, her certainty shaken, her body still bound but her mind suddenly unsure. As Karen watches, she remembers Akira's earlier explanation about needing a convincing narrative the other side can accept. The horned girl remains tense yet quiet, and Akira steps closer, asking why she, of all people, recognizes the archfiend's skill. He waits as she sits on the ground, chains rattling softly until she finally reveals the truth. The archfiend passed his skill to him. Akira speaks the final words he heard at the moment of inheritance. The girl's eyes widen instantly. She recognizes the voice without doubt. She knows that goblins can echo the last words of those who die, giving them a skill, and she knows the archfiend's voice better than anyone. Tears gather in her eyes as she accepts the truth. Overcome with grief, she collapses into loud, wrenching cries, mourning the archfiend's death. Far away, inside the quiet hall of the castle, the Count stands before an altar, stunned. He has just learned that the long-lived goblin now carries the archfiend's skill. A heavy unease settles over him, and he feels as though difficult days are drawing closer for humanity. The horned girl stands by the fire in the forest, looking worried and sad, while inside the castle the Count sits at his charanga board and thinks deeply. The maid notices his concern and wonders about it, and the Count reflects that every move still leads to a losing battle. He imagines a version of the game where the opponent gains strength from captured pieces while his own defeated pieces disappear, and he believes this unfair rule resembles the archfiend's skill. The scene returns to the horned girl, who blushes after crying in front of the goblins she barely met. Akira notes her tattered clothes and calls Echigoya over. Echigoya arrives, and Akira remembers how goblins once relied on monster-made or human-made clothes before Echigoya's skill group existed, as well as the Edo period shop that inspired his name. Echigoya asks the girl's name, and she introduces herself as Chloe. Akira requests clothes for her, and Ichigoya agrees. The goblins prepare cloth, and Chloe stands tensely as goblin children gather around her. They lift her into the air without warning, and she panics and flails while they excitedly shout, "Survival of the fittest!" Akira watches and notes that she should stop flailing, but the children continue carrying her. The children then lift Chloe again and later hurry toward Karen, pulling her along through the village while Echigoya waves them forward. Karen is dragged away, and Akira thinks she seems calmer than before. Soon, Echigoya presents the completed outfits, and both Chloe and Karen appear dressed in new clothes made from his crafting skills. Chloe stands next to Karen, embarrassed in her new outfit, while Echigoya shows his work. Akira looks over the clothes and reacts in surprise. Tools and spinning equipment appear, showing the skills used. Chloe watches Akira shyly and he suddenly freezes in shock. Akira gives a weak laugh as Karen studies him. Chloe remembers accusing him earlier and reacts with realization. Akira thinks about the archfiend's past, understanding that the archfiend used his skill only for himself and other monsters. He reads the books Karen gave him and learns how the archfiend gathered power, opposed humans, and made the world his enemy. Karen understands that this is why Akira wants to share the textile techniques, and Akira agrees. He realizes he may have inherited the archfiend's skill, but he decides not to repeat the archfiend's mistakes. The scene moves to the goblin village, where an elderly goblin lies on a small bed with his family gathered close. Akira kneels beside him as the old goblin reaches out with a faint voice, thinking about the life he lived and the 6 children he raised. Akira watches quietly as the elder weakens. A soft light lifts from the old goblin's body, offers its final thanks, and drifts into Akira's hands before the elder becomes still.
Here I am, know it's been a while.